Hi, I'm Lara Wallace. Welcome back to Bass Capital Radio Podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Rick Paul with the Small Business Development Center. I'm thrilled to have you on. We've talked many a times, but I think this is a great message that you're sharing today. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're quite welcome, Lara. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So Rick, I always ask the same question to everybody. I want to know, how did you find your way to Putnam County?
Well, that's a unique story, and I don't want to get too boring with it, but basically there's some family history here.
Okay.
So I have an uncle that came here and worked for the mill. He was the chief chemist, and he married a local girl. And then they, lived out their lives here in Palatka. So they actually lived in East Palatka. His name was Fritz Paul, and he married Stella Browning.
Okay.
And of course, that's the Browning Railroad Museum and the Browning family, right? So there's some family history here. And the fact is that most of the jobs I've taken in my life have been in small rural communities because I like to be outdoors and doing things outdoors, whether it's hiking, biking, being on the river, climbing the mountains, or what have you. So I love small towns, and I've lived in a lot of small towns in Florida, including Watertown, Lake City, Live Oak, and Mayo, Florida, and some other places. So that's how I got here, because the SBDC advertised this position. I'm like, Palatka? Oh, yeah.
I dig it. And you could not have found a better small town with resources. We've had some interviews with the Blue Way Trails, and we're talking about the Bartram Frolic soon. So there's a lot of things to do, whether it's kayaking, hiking. I found out, and I did not know this, that the ravines is actually a go-to spot if you were training your children to mountain climb because of the steep hills. So something I did not know, even though I've lived here my whole life.
And I love the ravines. It's very much fun to walk around the loop and then go in and out of those trails also.
Oh, yeah.
And then the surprise down at the bottom, of course, is the spring.
Absolutely. The kids always want to beeline down to the spring, and they're always looking for the gator, which sometimes is there, sometimes is not. Just letting everybody know. Morning.
It's always lurking.
Always lurking. I like it. So the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, is what brought you here, along with having family here, which is something I did not know, is that you had family. I also reside in East Palatka, next to a family of the Brownings. So small town, small world.
There you go.
Tell us a little bit about the SBDC.
Okay, so the SBDC is a unique organization. It's a nonprofit, and our mission statement is to help small businesses start, grow, and succeed, because when you do, you're going to hire somebody. And that's basic economic development 101 when you provide income and a job to somebody else. So the Small Business Development Center, what they offer is one-on-one, confidential, small business management consulting at no charge to the client.
No charge.
It's unbelievable. So it's one of the things that the federal government actually got right.
We'll leave that in there. That's amazing. No charge for this service, which I believe I have seen enough YouTube commercials to know that people do charge a hefty price for that kind of advice and leadership, if you will.
So if you were to go to a private small business consulting firm, it's kind of like being an attorney. They might charge you $400 an hour to do something. And in this case, it's our mission statement to help the small businesses. And so we do it free of charge.
Which is why you're in small towns.
Yeah, I love it. And the other reason I came to Palatka in Putnam County when I heard about this job is because I love mom and pop businesses.
Oh,
I could care less about the big box stores.
Right.
But the mom and pop businesses is what makes a community a community.
Well said.
So that's what attracted me to this place, as well as being in the outdoors. But mom and pop businesses, that's where it's at. And we're seeing a lot of new mom and pops move into the county and into the city.
One of our goals in Putnam County is to talk about the businesses that we have, the future outlook. And I think that as as people share their stories with me, as I get out there and talk about the podcast, a lot of our downtown small businesses, particularly, share that people out of town come to our community because of that. And I am thankful, don't get me wrong, for the convenience of having a hardware store, a chain hardware store for those needs. But there is something very special about being able to go get fresh ground coffee from someplace that's doing the roasting locally, that's doing the grinding locally. And that honestly is how we met. Was I saw a workshop or a social, I believe it was, that you put on. While I do not own a small business, I speak with a lot of small business owners, and my passion, which kind of landed me where I'm at, is to network within our community. As a homegrown Putnam County resident, I see so many opportunities and really just love Putnam County, and there are resources that people aren't even aware of. So I'm glad that I came to that social and found out about what you do, because I've been able to connect small business owners with you. And I would love to hear about what you actually do as a consultant.
Okay, that's great, because a lot of people don't know what our services are, or they think that we're the SBA or that we lend money, and we don't. So what we actually do, we help out in all 4 of the business stages. So the first business stage is really called pre-venture.
Okay.
And the pre-venture, we act as mentors. Well, we act as mentors throughout the entire thing, but especially in the pre-venture stage, because this is where somebody's got an idea and they're trying to think, hey, a small business life for me, how much money does it cost to start? Is it a good product or service? A good business model, those sort of things. Am I cut out to be a small business owner? Because you live, breathe, and a small business,
yes,
right?
You do.
So we provide a lot of feedback on general feedback. Yeah, it's a good business model, good industry, good product, service, location, that sort of thing. And then, once the client makes up their mind that they're going to go for it, then they move into stage number 2. Stage number 2 is called the startup. And this is where we do a lot of work with the small businesses to ensure that they're operating and above board and legal, so there are no major surprises coming down the road. If you don't set up correctly, there can be major surprises coming down the road, like legal structure. Now, we're not attorneys, but I know of a really good law firm. So it's important to figure out if your product or service could be hazardous in any way.
Sure.
And if it is, then certainly you're going to need to incorporate. But most small business startups are still sole proprietorships. Mm-hmm. So there's the legal aspect. Then there's the tax aspect. And
nobody likes that.
Nobody likes it at all, but you got to pay your taxes. So there's state sales tax, which a lot of people forget about that. I'm like, don't
maybe
forget about that. Maybe
because there's no state tax. Trying to logic my way down to that one, right?
All right. And then, of course, the IRS. Mm-hmm. So those are some big issues that we need to make sure that are set up correctly, along with a commercial bank account. Mm-hmm. You can no longer commingle your personal funds with the business funds. Always make sure you carry the necessary insurance. Mm-hmm. And then there's about another dozen things, zoning, licensing, permits, those sort of things. So we help the client at that stage get level and above board, so those surprises don't happen.
Right.
So theoretically, then, once the client has their first customer, now they're in the third stage, which is an existing business. We do a lot of work with them in that stage. And then finally, the last stage is called the business exit. So there you're looking at me, what's he talking about? The business. I hadn't even started my business yet. Right, you're talking about a business exit.
Exactly.
Right?
How do I get out of it? I haven't started it.
Yeah. All right. So, but here's the thing to the business exit. In order to have a successful business exit, you have to do like 7 or 8 things correctly throughout that entire lifespan of the business in order to have a business exit. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, the business exit is where you're expecting to get a return, i.e. sell your business and make money on it and get a recoup on all that blood, sweat, tears, equity, time, energy that you've pumped into it over those years, and probably retire and move to Florida.
Right. I see what you did there.
So the following things you've got to do throughout the entire lifespan of the business in order to have a sellable business and have a successful business exit. Number 1, never run a cash business. The IRS is going to eat your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, drive your car, live in your house, and have your pet dog as its pet if you do that.
Spot belongs to them.
Never hide your income as a small business owner. Be happy, be proud you're a small business owner. Show that income stream for many of the reasons I'm about to mention. But never run a cash business. Now, when you have a business, can you accept cash? Sure, but account for it correctly.
Right.
Have an accounting system. So that's number 2. Have an accounting system. Find somebody to do your bookkeeping for you, or accounting, or a CPA, because just because you can afford to go online and buy, say, QuickBooks in the cloud doesn't turn you into an accountant.
Sure.
I've got 2 degrees in business, been teaching business my whole life. I'm not an accountant. I know it, right? It's not in my wheelhouse.
Not something I would put on my resume.
There you go. And guess what? Tax laws change all the time. The software changes almost daily. It's amazing.
Right.
So pay somebody to set you up correctly in your books and oversee you with your data entry monthly, quarterly, and then do your taxes and all your filing that needs to be done. And but even if you have an accountant set you up, which you need to do, you need to know your numbers. So you manage a business by the numbers. So, for example, how many times have you seen the Shark Tank on TV?
Plenty.
All right. So it's an interesting show, and we all pretty much know the format. Somebody comes out onto the stage and makes a cutesy presentation, and then the sharks go, such a lovely presentation, lovely, very nice. And then normally it's Mr. Wonderful who asks that first question of the contestant there. What are your numbers? What are you buying it for? What are you selling it for?
Right.
If the contestant doesn't know that, they get kicked off the show.
Right.
Why? Because you have to know your numbers to manage the business.
Sure.
That's why the Shark Tank always asks, number 1, what are your numbers? Right? So you got to have those numbers. You got to be able to use those numbers. It doesn't take a lot to run a business. It's just a lot of little details. For example, you don't need a PhD to run a business.
Sure.
You don't even need a high school degree.
Right.
What you got to be is good at adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, knowing when and where and how to do it, and what the numbers tell you, because you run the business by the numbers.
Right.
All right. Now, the IRS is tricky. And how many times have you heard that commercial on TV or the radio where somebody's going, well, I owe the IRS $60,000 and I don't have it.
Absolutely.
Well, hello, pay your taxes. Okay. So here's how the IRS will work. You're going to fill out your taxes and send them in yearly to the IRS. And each business has a unique code. It's called a NAICS code, NAICS. Stands for North American Industrial Classification System.
Okay.
You send that in, and they pigeonhole you with every business of the similar type.
All right.
So they know the average.
Restaurant.
Right. A restaurant's a restaurant, sit down or fast food or what have you. So they know the numbers and what you should be doing. So when you send in your taxes, they'll look at it and compare it to the industry average that they have there. And they see you have a loss, so they'll look it up and say, yeah, okay, this business takes them 2 years to break even. They have a loss first year, it's okay. Second year, you turn in your taxes, you still have a loss. They look at it and say, okay, well, they should be breaking even by now, but we'll let that slide. Third year comes and goes, and oh my gosh, you're not showing a profit. You're showing loss. Well, if they don't call you out on it on the third year, they're going to call you out on it on the fourth year if you're still showing a loss. And the phone conversation is going to go something like this. Hey, Lara, this is Rick from the IRS. How you doing today? And your heart starts going
exactly.
down. And you're like,
first thought.
well, not too good today. Why?
It was great until you called.
So they say, that business that you have and all those deductions you've been taking over this period of time. Well, since you're not making any money, you really don't have a business. You have a hobby, and you cannot deduct expenses from a hobby. So the $100,000 you paid for the building and the $100,000 you put in for the renovations, leasehold improvements, you got salaries, you got inventory, you got marketing expenses. Let's call it $500,000. they're now going to say, oh, you owe us income tax on $500,000 plus late fees, penalties, and what is it, 30% interest? Doesn't sound like a place I want to go. I don't know about you.
Not at all. Not even kind of.
Don't want to be there. So here's the deal. Be happy, be proud of your small business owner. Show the profit. Number one, you need to know your numbers to make good business decisions.
Right.
Number two, it keeps the IRS off your tail. All right. And you don't want the IRS on
not after that example.
No. So be happy, be proud. You're a small business owner. Show where you're making a profit, because sooner or later, you're going to need credit. And so in order to get credit, which is a loan of some sort or a line of credit, you're going to have to show to the lender that you can repay the loan, and the rent on that loan called interest.
Right.
There isn't a lender on the planet that's going to lend you money if you can't repay it.
Sure.
It just isn't going to happen. So a lot of people.
That's like when my kids ask me for to borrow some money to go shopping. We both know that you don't have a job yet.
Yeah, they're not paying you back. So be happy, be proud you're a small business owner. Show that profit, because the lender is going to be looking for that profit. They're looking for the cash flow. Now, small business ownership is different than a lot of other types of large businesses and corporations and that sort of thing. What we're doing is we're operating under the replacement income theory.
Okay.
Well, Rick, what's the replacement income theory?
You knew my question.
Well, there you go. So what it is let's say, I'm tired of working for the SBDC. Just kidding. Really?
I can edit that out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I live in Palatka, the bass fishing capital of the world. And what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I want to rent the end of the dock out here and put in a bait shop and sell bait and beer and just hang out.
Yeah.
Right? Sounds cool. Rick's Bait Shop.
Living the dream.
There you go. So Rick's Bait Shop. Well, how much money would I expect to make running Rick's Bait Shop? It's called the replacement income theory. Hopefully, I would be able to recoup the amount of money that I get paid through the SBDC.
Sure.
So that's the replacement income. So what we're doing is we're providing a needed product or service to the community in exchange for reasonable living.
Okay.
All right. So always be happy, be proud of your small business owner. Show where you're making money. Show that income stream, because you need to know your numbers. It keeps the IRS off your tail. And sooner or later, you're going to need credit and be able to get that loan. Now, if you've been doing all of those things correctly over that entire lifespan of that business, do you have a sellable business?
You would think so.
You would think so. And the answer would probably be yes, because now you can prove that income stream because you have IRS tax returns from the business. They'll match up to your personal IRS tax returns.
Okay.
So, the kids don't want the business. You want to retire and move to Florida. Those kids, let's talk about those kids for a second.
Okay.
It's like 60% of them don't want their parents' business.
I was surprised that usually the family business stays in the family, but that's very trendy right now to pass. I don't want to do that. I want to do something else.
And guess why the parents started the business in the first place? To be able to have something to hand off to the kids so that they can send their kids through college and buy a house and a car and have a nice living. But let's say they don't want the business, which happens pretty frequently. Do you have a sellable business? Well, you have your financial records you can send in to a business valuation specialist.
Okay.
Think of them as a real estate appraiser, but instead of appraising real estate, they're appraising your business.
Right.
So now you can prove your income stream. And the business valuation specialist will come back and say something like, well, Lara, you've had $100,000 worth of income over the last 10 years for this business. We feel that your business is worth a multiple of that cash flow. So the conditions that they look at for this is that income. How much income are you making? How long have you been making it? What the competition is, what the state of the economy is, the type of business you're in, and all these other factors. And they might come back and say, well, due to all these factors, we feel your business is worth a multiple of 5 times that annual cash flow.
Okay.
So congratulations, you now have a $500,000 business to sell. And so that's that blood, sweat, and equity and tears that we've been talking about that you hope to recoup. But you don't have a buyer yet. So the next step is to go to a business broker.
Okay.
So they're like a real estate broker, but of course they sell businesses.
Okay.
All right. So you put it out there, you list with this broker, and somebody comes along and says, hey, yeah, let me see the records of that. And so you do a non-disclosure agreement with a person looking at it.
Right.
And they look at it, and then you start negotiating on the price. But what it really boils down to at the end is, what are they actually purchasing when they purchase your business? They're purchasing that annual cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
They like doing whatever it is that you do for the business,
right?
But they're really buying the cash flow. So be happy, be proud you're a small business owner, show the income stream, get your records set up correctly, be able to get the credit and keep the IRS at bay.
Right.
All right.
Especially after that conversation.
All right. So now, what do we actually do? So along all that spectrum, what we do, our services, are that we have access to paid databases that would charge you like $2,000 for one report. Oh, hey, we've already paid the $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do the research for you and not charge you for it. So lots of very good marketing research. We also help guide you through marketing plans, business plans, loan packaging.
It's very challenging to get that out on paper.
Oh yes, it's a process, and step by step,
right.
we go through it and figure it all out. And so we also do like government procurement consulting, patents, trademarks.
What's just educate me, a government procurement consultant? How would you handle that?
Okay, so somebody wants to sell product or service to the government.
Right.
So you have state government, you have federal government, and you have city and then county government. Mm-hmm. Well, the feds is a whole nother ballgame. That takes at least 2 years to work your way to selling to the federal government. But in the meantime, if you're really into government procurement and want to sell, you can sell to the city, the county, and the state. But there's a certain process that you have to go through. You've got to be able to prove that you can produce said product or service.
Right.
And so you need experience doing it. Nobody's just going to say, give you the contract for the space shuttle without proving that you can build a space shuttle.
Right.
I mean,
First thing I thought about was a protection item of, what you could sell, but there's also, intelligence, technology, applications, things like that. So, and you don't really think about, as I think about Putnam County, I think about our agricultural, our restaurants, our, boutiques, whatever it might be. But there are people out there that come from somewhere, and doesn't mean that they can't come from here that might have a product to do that. So the fact that you're a resource for that as well is incredible.
So selling to the government can actually be a good thing. But again, you got to have the experience and be able to do what you do. The school board is a government entity that buys from folks along with the city, the county, the state. Again, the federal is a whole nother ballgame on that. So that's the government procurement aspect that we can help with. Import, export, patents and trademarks. And then I hope my boss doesn't see this, but there's like another 10 things that we do that I can't even remember.
Have you done, just curious, have you done any federal procurement cases?
Normally we pass that along to a specialist that we have. And so we can help at the beginning levels of it. But once they reach a certain level, then they need an expert. Sure. And we have those experts available.
Wonderful.
So those pretty much what we do. Now here's what we don't do.
Okay.
All right. So sometimes there's no substitute for paid professionals. All right. As you well know, an attorney is a paid professional. Mm-hmm. I can read a contract, but that doesn't mean I'm any good at it or it has any sort of legal implications.
Right.
So I'll give you an example of why it's so important to have an attorney read a contract prior to signing it. And of course, the names have changed to protect the innocent because all of our clients are confidential.
Right.
Right. But let's just say there was somebody in St. Augustine that decided to open up a sandwich shop on one of those cute little one-way streets. Mm-hmm. And they signed a contract without really having an attorney read it or really understanding what was in the contract. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out it's a triple net lease. So some of you out there might know what a triple net lease is. Some of you don't. So let's go over what is a triple net lease. Well, about 2 months into this business, the roof leaked.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy that's renting the place, making the sandwiches, calls up the landlord and says, hey, the roof's leaking, come fix it. And the landlord says, oh, turn to page 3 in the lease. And so he does and reads it and says, oh, he's responsible for fixing the roof. 3 months later, after that expense, he's just getting over that, the HVAC goes out. So he calls up the landlord and says, hey, come fix the HVAC. And he says, no, look on page 4 of your lease.
Mm-mm-mm.
So here's a triple net lease. Not only does the person renting the property have to pay a lease or rent, but they're responsible for the water, the power, the HVAC, the roof, any sort of improvements, and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And
yeah, that's a good reason to have an attorney.
Yeah, a very good reason. And then the biggest reason of all was the biggest surprise the individual got, because the tax bill came and he calls up the landlord and says, hey, the tax bill's here. And the landlord says, turn to page 6.
Mm.
And sure enough, the sandwich shop guy.
That hurts my stomach to think about.
The sandwich shop guy. I mean, how much money is there in sandwiches? It's not that much, right? So here, the triple net lease meant he had to pay $45,000 tax bill. He's paying a lot of money to be in St. Augustine to lease the place.
Right.
And he's responsible for all the repairs and maintenance on the building. So the landlord doesn't care, though, because the landlord has somebody paying his mortgage, the guy that's renting the place.
Right.
And they're paying for all the repairs and the maintenance of the building, and they're paying the taxes.
And they signed a contract to do so.
And they signed probably a 5-year lease to do this.
Right.
So this is why sometimes there's no substitute for paid professionals. A good example, have an attorney look at your lease prior to signing it or any other contract along those lines.
Oh, for sure.
Then we're also not accountants, bookkeepers, CPAs, tax professionals. We're not insurance agents. We're not HR people. What we try to do is figure out where you are in that lifespan of the business and try to guide you to where you're trying to go.
Right.
So that's pretty much what we do. The power of the SBDC really is in being able to have all the consultants talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if I have somebody come in and ask me a question I don't know the answer to, I can call up one of my other consultants, and it's all confidential still, and say, hey, I got a client that has this type of problem. Did you have a client that had that type of problem? How did they go around the problem, or over it, under it, or through it, or ignore it? And what was the outcome? And in that way, quite literally together, all the consultants can pretty much figure out about 90 to 95% of all typical small businesses in the country.
So really, we had someone using your services would not only have access to a consultant, but really a team of consultants who have likely, that's a pretty high statistic, have likely encountered this and have some kind of resolution.
And it's going to be successful because it was successful by another client in another location that had a similar problem, did it, and had a good outcome to it. So that's really where the power of this. Yeah, for free. So that's really the power of the SBDC and how good that, we can help out. We've all been vetted. They just don't hire anybody off the street to do this.
You must have been the exception, right?
Yeah.
When I heard, and I think when I first heard a generalized packaging of what you were offering, you had me at free, which, that's everybody's favorite word, right? But when I recognized the value that you bring, I didn't really understand the totality of it. That's a very big umbrella from A to Z. You've got it pretty well covered, and not necessarily that you're doing it, nor that whether you're not providing money or not providing CPA or whatever, you have the resources to connect them with people and give them advice. It was a no-brainer to me when I came across, there's a specific friend of mine, and he and his wife, both good friends of mine, that were trying to develop a business. And I think I just maybe in a couple weeks prior saw, oh my gosh, look at what all is available free. And I immediately said, you got to go talk to this guy. And at first there was some hesitancy, they were trying to figure it out themselves. I was like, no, you got to go talk to him. You got to go talk to him. I probably shared your number no less than 50 times.
Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Because first of all, we want Putnam County, or any community for that matter, but Putnam County to be a thriving small community. We like the small part of that. We like the mom and pop shops. I like being able to go into a place and while I might spend an awful lot of time in, Lowe's or Home Depot, if I was a contractor, the likelihood of everybody knowing me or knowing my family, if my dad came in there, whatever, then my dad did go in there a lot. Let's just say Ace Hardware, I've been coming in since I was a child, or these local restaurants that have been around, Corky Bells, whatever it might be, going in and it being this might have been your cousin's best friend growing up that opened this business. It's something very magical about that. And it is very hard for small businesses to survive, especially with the competition of big box businesses. We see a specific yellow store that pops up on every corner all the time. Maybe not so much as anymore, but, that is hard to compete with when the prices that they have, maybe your prices are a little bit higher, but you're paying for keeping it local. So to encourage people to know that they can start a business locally and have that resource, all that you just said, for free, is really incredible. And it's a no-brainer. Like, why not go ask somebody who's done this a few times? I would take it. Since you started in your 20s and you're now, 22? You
23.
Oh, I'm sorry, 23. So you've done this for about 3 years. How long have you been doing this, really, though?
You really want to know how old I am?
I don't want to know. I did not. To be fair, I did not ask that question, but I would like to know how long you've been doing it.
Since about 1983.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry, came out the wrong way. That's incredible.
Yeah.
See,
well, I've either been working for the SBDC or teaching entrepreneurship at the college level since about 1988 or so.
What made you go into that?
Okay, so I'm one of the guys that when I grew up, back in our day, your moms kicked you out of the house. They didn't want you in the house, right? So you're outside all day. So
that street light was your timer, right?
Right. And the dinner bell. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, I'm outside all the time, and I was lucky when I was growing up. I lived on the side of a golf course. So my first business was actually a lemonade stand when I was age 6.
Really? That's wonderful.
Selling lemonade to the golfers coming by.
Very cliche. I love it.
Yeah, it was great. And then quickly I learned how to become a caddy. So I became a caddy. And then I learned actually the most money to be made was actually finding lost golf balls and then selling golf balls. So by the age of 8, I had bought a brand new bicycle as a kid. Yep.
You're a hustler.
Yeah.
Early hustler.
And I was a kid that was pushing a lawnmower down the street, trying to earn $5 to mow your lawn. Of course, the parents were paying for the lawnmower and the gas, but still, I'm out there doing stuff like that.
Right.
So that's how I kind of got into this. When I went to college, University of South Florida, they didn't have entrepreneurship. It was kind of a secret. And so the people that did it very well, but they didn't pass along the information.
Okay.
So I took all the classes necessary for me to learn how to do entrepreneurship. And then when I got out of college, I don't really want to say what year it was because then you're going to think I'm really old. But Jimmy Carter was president. Interest rates were 21.5%. Wow. Nobody was hiring. Right? It was the worst recession since the Great Depression up until that point in time. So I started my own business. I had a community newspaper in Jacksonville, Florida. Lots of fun, and I enjoyed doing that. I ran it for 3 years, sold it, and then took that money and invested in an MBA at the University of North Florida.
Okay.
While I was doing that, I started working for the SBDC back when Dr. Lowell Salter was there. So that's a long time ago for the people that knew Dr. Salter. And it's just taken off from there. I wrote a business textbook on entrepreneurship and then started teaching entrepreneurship around the country. So I've been to Vermont, Idaho, Pennsylvania, Texas, a couple other states somewhere in there besides Florida.
Now, question. Do you get, I know you're not in it for anything, right? But do you still like get to go visit these businesses that you've helped a hand with? And do you get like a free meal every once in a while out of the hard work you do?
No, I actually pay for my product or
I love
service
it.
when I go to.
That's beautiful.
I'm supporting the small businesses. That's why I'm here. I'm
Right.
here for mom and pop.
But on the non-joking side, do you get to go back and visit these businesses? And I'm sure that must be very fulfilling to see the hard work that you've done. You know,
It's great to see somebody succeed. It's wonderful. And it's wonderful to do like a grand opening or a ribbon cutting or all of those sort of things. We actually have success stories that we write. And some of our local Putnam County folks have been featured in a couple of them. And I think maybe coming up soon, we might have a nominee for the Florida Small Business of the Year Award. But that's about a year out, but shh, don't tell anybody.
Done. We'll come back and we'll talk about it when I can tell people. That's incredible. I love that story that you were hustling lemonade and golf services as a child. So obviously this is a passion, and you must find this work very fulfilling to have been in it, for the last 3 years, right? So where would we find you? Let's say you've watched this video and you're like, I've been toying around with this idea. I have a small business idea and I wonder, could it work? Or maybe you're in a business and you're like, I'm ready to retire, whatever that might be. How do we connect with you?
Okay, so right now I'm officed at the Chamber of Commerce, so that's 1100 Reed Street. The best way really to reach me is via an email, so that would be r.paul@unf.edu.
We'll be sure to leave that below as well, so people know how to connect with you.
Okay.
Now, if they want to learn more, let's say they want to do a little bit of homework before they commit. All right, I'm interested, but I'm not ready to go meet the man, the myth, the legend yet. Where could they find out more information about the SBDC?
So you can go to the University of North Florida's website and type in SBDC, and all the information will pop up about the consultants that are there, what we do. We have lots of things online. We have lots of webinars online where people can learn about business. And it's very specific, like maybe it's QuickBooks training, or maybe it's about marketing or about web design, those sort of things. So lots of resources available through the SBDC. And of course, at the local office here at the Putnam County Chamber of Commerce, I frequently hold socials and workshops. In fact, just got through with 2 CRA networking events in the last, since the beginning of the year. We've got other workshops coming up, like a lending workshop will be coming up in July. And just networks and socials, get out there, mingle. That's the number one way you make a small business successful, is introduce yourself to people, hand out your business cards, tell them what it is that you do, and hand them 2 business cards instead of just one.
One for you, one for a friend.
There you go.
I love that idea. What is the coolest in all your years that you've done this? What do you feel like the most interesting or the coolest business that you've got to help open was?
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah, I just like mom and pops.
Yeah.
So there are some big ones.
That's a good answer.
And that grow big, but I'm here for mom and pop, and I'm trying to help them become more successful.
That's a great answer. I never even had to slide a 20 across the table. Well, are there any other words of wisdom that you would like to leave with a viewer who is, interested in any of what we've discussed?
One of my favorite sayings is entrepreneurship rewards those who take action. So if you've got a good idea, check it out. It doesn't really cost you much to check it out. And if it looks like it's going to be good, come see me. We can work on all sorts of things, marketing research. I can help guide you. We can even crunch some numbers and perform financial projections to see if the business will work out or not. Don't wait. The window of opportunity will actually slam shut on you if you wait too long. For sure.
So if you don't do it, somebody else will.
Right.
And maybe you do it. Maybe somebody else has already done it, but you might have a spin on it that's totally unique. So Well, I learned a lot about what all you had to offer. I think again, this is a great resource. To your point, that you and I kind of landed on the same takeaway is that if it is free, FREE, no cost to you, why not? Why not explore that? I like to aggravate you at least once a month with some kind of thought or idea, whether it be my own thoughts about what would work here, or whether it be a friend or a colleague. If you've watched this and you know somebody who could benefit from this, it costs you nothing to take a leap of faith and just adventure out on an idea, because who knows, you could be the next mom and pops that is being presented with a ribbon cutting downtown, or maybe out in the other communities, not just necessarily Palatka. You serve all of Putnam County, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I've seen you in many places. You have car will travel, and I look forward to catching up in a year so you could tell us about this small business of the year. Is that what you're?
Yes.
Oh, that's super exciting. So right here out of Putnam County. Well, thank you for your time. Again, if you have any questions, we're going to leave the resources below. You can find Rick at the chamber downtown. We'll leave a link to where you can find that as well. But thank you so much for your time.
Lara, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll see you on the next episode.
Cheers.